going on, guys, and welcome to another car feature video. This is our first one that we've done in quite a while, and we're kicking things back off with a pretty big bang. We have a full-on drag car here, and this thing is out the gate. How's it going, man? Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the Laurel here.
My name's Brendan Jones, and I work at Car Aid, hence the sponsorship down the side there. Basically into drag racing. This came up from a guy, Stu Rogers, used to campaign it, and I bought it as a rolling body. A workmate, Al, who sort of specialised in building RB engines, and another mate, Phil, from NZFI. We sort of got together and came up with a bit of a plan on how we could get it on the track as cheap as possible and go a bit of fun.
This is obviously a C33 Laurel, and it's pretty much a Laurel up to the rear seats you were saying before.
Yeah, basically it's just a back half car. So Stu bought a competition engineering back half kit, which is for a 9-inch Ford diff, 4-bar sort of rear end, and they went about basically fitting that to this chassis. So yeah, it's sort of half drag car, half factory Laurel.
So you've got some obviously some real big tyres on the back of this to get the traction down for the drag strip.
Yeah, I think the 15x12 Pro Stars made by Weld Wheels in America, and it's got obviously the Pro Stars on the front.
Suspension wise, this is all obviously, especially in the rear, it'll be all custom.
Well, yeah, it's all part of that kit. It's just got single adjustable shocks on at the moment. I've just bought some double adjustable shocks to go into it for next season, so hopefully that's going to help us on our 60-foot times, just being able to have a bit more adjustability.
And diff wise,
It's the Ford 9-inch, and I think we're running a 3.4 to 1 gear ratio on it. We've just changed from a 3.8, just trying to get, maybe not rev the engine so hard.
Full roll cage and completely all gutted in here, and I can see you got a Link ECU there.
So Link Thunder, and basically Phil was the brains behind everything there. Al and I actually built a engine for one of the staff at NZFI, and he did all the wiring for us under Phil's instructions. So we've tried to keep it as cheap as we possibly can everywhere we can.
You can see the tablet you got there instead of super expensive dash.
Yeah, so that's just like a Chinese tablet, and Phil's configured it all just so it's our dash, just to keep things cheap.
Does a trick though.
Yeah, it does everything we need it to do.
May as well get to the good part of the car, and we'll take this front clip off, because this is actually all fiberglass as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all one-piece fiberglass clip, so just easy to get it off, between rounds.
Sweet. Oh, we'll pop this off and have a look at this engine. So this is the heart of the beast. This is one serious looking setup, and it's 3.2 stroked.
Yep, so it's basically a VL Commodore bottom end, or VL Commodore block, and it's a spool 3.2 92mm stroke crank, and spool rods, CP pistons, basically what you can buy from spool imports Australia.
Has the block been bought out, sleeved at all?
No, it's pretty stock as far as, like, we don't go grout filling or anything like that, because we're still running just E50 with a radiator, obviously. We didn't want to go methanol because it definitely adds a fair bit more complication. We just gone to doing billet steel main caps, because the last time we pulled it down, we found that it had been fretting the main cradle, your factory RB cradle. You could see fretting marks where it was starting to walk around. So yeah, we put a billet steel brace. I mean, sure, like these things, there's no secrets with these things anymore. Realistically, with Google, you can go online and you'll see what we're talking about, i.e. big steel brace around the bottom and steel billet main caps, and yeah, hopefully, and 11mm, I upgraded it to 11mm main studs as well, just to try and hold all that bottom end together a bit solider.
And it's this is an RB26 head.
That's right, yeah, so it's a GDR head. RB26.
Much work any machine work been done to it?
It's a serious amount of work.
Serious amount of work?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's where your power is, because as most people know, they're just an air pump, and you got to get air in and get it out. The head's been CNC ported by a local company, Horsepower Heads, and we, obviously being machinists, have done all the machine work, so we fitted oversized Fourier valves and much bigger valve springs. A lot of people overlook valve springs, like seriously important part of the engine to not overlook. Probably the biggest Kelford cams you can get out of their catalogue.
I can attest to the big cams. This thing sounds like a rotary at idle.
Yeah, people have said.
Yeah.
There's had a PP rotary in there in the past. But yeah, there's been a lot of work. If you have a look under the engine bay there too, we've got rid of the 6 throttle, the factory 6 throttles, because at real high horsepower levels they are a restriction. So we go to a single throttle and as big a plenum as we can get on there, because we're not really looking at low down torque too much, you know, it's all about high end power. But yeah, it's had a serious amount of work done to these. Turbo is 7780, so 77 front wheel, millimeter front wheel, and an 80mm turbine. No, it's the other way, isn't it?
8077.
80 mil compressor and 77 on the rear. Twin scroll, yeah, twin entry manifold. Brendan himself just fabricated the exhaust manifold.
Oh, that's cool. So I can see individual EGT sensors on each cylinder there.
Yeah, so we've got an oxygen sensor in the downpipe, obviously, for a collective O2 reading, but we need to know each individual cylinder is okay. They're expensive, but they are good insurance for longevity.
Another thing for insurance and longevity is dry sump pump down there.
Yeah, I'm sure, as I said earlier, there's no secrets with these things anymore, so, you know, like RB problems really are the oiling systems.
Definitely.
And that's good insurance, as you see.
Have the oil returns been drilled out at all?
Yeah, they've been enlarged, and I've done a few other little tricks with them as well to try and keep the oil from pouring straight down onto the crank as they do. Try and keep it channeled away from the crank.
Because that's a problem they have, because it drops directly onto the crank and it whips it up. And
yeah, I mean, if you look at, like, we love to have the whole 2J RB argument, but if you look at the way a 2J bottom end's configured, they drop the oil completely channeled away from the crank, whereas unfortunately with the RB it drops straight onto the crank. So we run a dry sump, try and pull a vacuum in the bottom end as much as we can, and that helps suck the oil away from the crank.
Awesome. And I assume you're running some huge injectors there. How big are they?
They are ID 2200s. There's a lot of conjecture about those as well. They're a CNG injector. But once again, Phil Taylor at NZFI has run them for years and years, and he recommended them for us. We've got an injector tester at work, so we pull them out pretty regularly and check them, but touch wood, they've been super reliable.
Awesome. And what intake manifold is that?
That is actually a Chinese greedy knockoff. That's been prettied up by us. The castings are great, they're really thick, so they can handle a heap of boost. Like most of the Chinese stuff, it's a matter of going through it and checking it out and making sure that it's good.
I really like how you've done the wrinkled black covers and on the manifold as well. It looks really good.
Yeah, the crinkle paints are quick and easy tidy up.
Yep, so you've got obviously running a radiator in the front here, but you're still running a real, is that a water-cooled intercooler?
Yeah, that's a water there. Yeah, Brendan will probably elaborate on that.
That's the old Chinese jobby. Again, just keeping it cheap. Yeah, so we just made a ice tank. We go through probably 2.5 party bags. Everyone will know what the party bags, how the size of them. We go through 2.5 of them a run, so we'll melt that. We fill the ice box up, and by the end of the run, there might be like 8 bits of ice left over. So even the old Chinese intercooler is still doing its job. Intake charge down.
We were lucky enough to have a mate who's a Friggy and who's supplied us with an ice maker, so that's knocked a bit of money out of the budget. Yeah, put it that way. Because ice gets expensive, believe it or not.
When you're burning through 3 bags a run.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Obviously, electric water pump here as well.
The best thing about the electric water pump is the fact that it stays going when we've shut the motor off. So we don't need to worry about the heat soak problems that you'd get with an engine-driven water pump. We still run the engine water pump as well.
Oh yeah, I can see. Yeah, still got the pulley on there.
A lot of people probably would take that off, but the original incarnation of it being in the drift car, and Phil did some experimenting on the dyno, we sort of found that it was worthwhile just keeping that there as well.
This motor actually originally was in a drift car.
Yeah, it was in Phil Taylor from NZFI's S14 drift car. It had a T51R HKS turbo on it at that stage, and when Brendan bought the car, Phil, being a drag racing lover that he was like, well, you may as well have the engine back out of my car and put it in this, because it realistically was a drag engine more so than a drift engine. It was probably a bit much for his car, so we built him an RB25 to replace it.
You're running HKS cam gears, I can see, and a trigger kit?
Yeah, so yeah, HKS cam gears, that's right, and the trigger kit is a Franklin Engineering, actually. Yeah, it's another New Zealand company that makes some really awesome product. And the bottom trigger is pretty much car-aid custom bottom trigger. Oh,
so you're running a trigger on the crank as well?
Yeah, so being dry sumped, obviously we don't need to run the factory oil pump, so we machined a billet front oil cover replacement and put the crank trigger internal inside the engine.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so we've got a reluctor style trigger inside the engine. Touchwood's been really good.
That's awesome. So obviously with a serious engine like this, you've got to be able to put the power down. So what are you running behind this transmission wise?
So we've got a TH400. It basically came with the car, so it was quite good. It was rebuilt by Chuck Mann. Stu, the previous owner, he had a bit of trouble with a few different transers, so he sent it off to Chuck and just asked for basically same combination as what Rips were running in their 240Z. Basically he just had it built to sort of that spec because Chuck was building Rips's transers at the time, so Stu just asked for the same as him. Good enough for Rips, good enough for Stu, and it's been faultless.
It's been ultra reliable.
It's been really good. So the cool thing about drag cars is, well, especially if they've got like an auto on them, is the trans brake. So on this thing, because it's got a decent sized turbo on it, we need a shot of nitrous. So Phil's got it all programmed that when it sees the trans brake button pressed, it gets a 50 shot of nitrous just to help it get it up onto rev limiter, which is around about 4,500, 5,000 RPM. And from there it manages to build enough boost so that when I let go of the trans brake button, you know, full boost up, ready to go.
Well, can't think of too many other things we want to talk about. It's got standard Laurel brakes up front, not the big brakes, but you've obviously run chutes on this car.
Yeah, as I tell my kids, you know, cool cars have parachutes, so just basically rely on the chute to do most of the braking. So you don't really need big brakes on the front when your tyres are only that big. You can only pull up so much weight on a small tyre.
Awesome, but you're still running Willwoods in the back, so you've got some upgraded brakes in the rear.
Yeah, so it's got Willwood rear calipers and floating discs on the back that came with the kit.
To date, the best time we've done is an 8.2 at 165.
160.
And
yeah,
the PB on the mile an hour is 170 mile an hour, and we've still got, like, that's with nowhere near the full power tune in it yet.
And what has been the highest power figure that this thing has made on the dyno?
The motor, this current incarnation has been on the dyno. We didn't really record an accurate power figure because with an auto and pod dyno, it's actually pretty hard to get an accurate power number. It did make 600 kilowatt on about 15 pound, but Phil dynoed it and tuned it completely in his car when it had the T51R on it. Slightly different incarnation as far as the head and the cams go, and it made about 1100 on 28 pound.
So this is definitely a 1,000 horsepower motor.
Easily 1,000 horsepower, yeah.
Well, that is probably going to be it for this portion of the video, guys, and stay tuned because it's about to do a burnout and this thing is going to be wild. So that will wrap it for this one. This car is insane, and yeah, this is a real good way to kick off our first car feature for not only this year, but first car feature we've done in quite a while. Any last words?
Yeah, we just want to thank Paul Coates at Car Aid, the boss, just letting us use the workshop and financing the engine. Thank Al here for building the engine, and thank Phil, who's not here, for configuring all the electronics and technical.
Phil Taylor is NZFI, and yeah, like absolute brains of the whole thing, really.
Yeah.
And the other people that have helped us are Calford Cams, Horsepower Heads. Like Christchurch realistically has such a wealth of knowledge in the automotive industry, and the entire city in ways has contributed to this car. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Pretty much thanks to everyone.
Craig Mills at South Pacific Turbochargers for helping us out with that new turbo. So looking forward to actually getting that on track and seeing how that helps us out. So yeah, no, we're looking forward to getting the new combination on the track. And
if you want to see it running, come to Pegasus Bay Drag Club. We run at Ruapuna. Leggett's Road is our official address.
Yeah.
But check out the website or our Facebook page, and yeah, we've got quite a few really cool cars out there, so yeah, check it out.
And this isn't going to be the last drag car we do. We've got some things lined up, so yeah, if you guys like drag racing, check all that stuff out, and yeah, stay tuned for when we do some videos on some more drag cars. But that'll be it for this one, guys. Cheers for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll catch you in the next one.